Okay, that's enough of that. Hey guys, this is the WideShut Webcast with Keelan Balderson, that's me. And today I'm going batshit crazy. First off, I'll just ask, can everybody hear me okay? Because we know what Blog Talk Radio's like here on Resistance Radio. It never tends to like to work properly. And I'm getting a bit of static in my own ear, so bollocks. But can you all hear me okay? Just drop a message into the chatter's room. Should be okay. The WideShut Coughcast. Oh, there we go. It's like a 60-second delay this week. What's going on? Anyway, yeah. I'm a little detached today. Is that the right word? Distant is probably a better word. I'm in one of my thinking days, my pondering days, trying to process all the recent information on Libya, Japan. We've got Saturday's protest. All this stuff swirling around in my brain, and I've had to sort of take a step back and have some quiet time rather than some hardcore researching, because I've just got, kind of overworked by it all, to be honest. Sounds still good. I'm getting strange static in my ear. Maybe they know I'm going batshit crazy and they're trying to add to the drama. But yeah, I've kind of taken a step out of the facts and figures world, the left brain thinking, and I've spent some time meditating, re-evaluating why I'm here, what I want to accomplish in this movement, what my quote-unquote inner self is trying to get me to do. And I'm just going to share some random thoughts with you today. A few of my more spiritual experiences, I guess, because I don't think I've ever really gone into my own awakening, what woke me up, all that kind of thing. I'm kind of known as the straight-laced guy on Resistance Radio that tells everybody off for talking about the Illuminati and all that kind of thing. But there is a good side to that, trying to stay factual, trying to, stick to the stuff that's going to help the average person understand without sounding like a complete kooky moron. But at the same time, if you always stick in that how would you say it? I'm going to go with David Icke now, but if you stick in that 5 cents reality for too long, and every day you're just reading over all the crap that's going on in the world, and you're coming on Resistance Radio and talking about it, and you're trying to write articles, and you're trying to stay fast, at a certain point it builds up, and it just becomes too stressful, and creativity just, it disappears. I can't always be reading. I can't always be analysing. I mean, we can all study history, read the facts of the New World Order agenda until it comes out of our ears. But I think unless we sit back from time to time and ponder some things and let our imaginations run wild for a while, if we don't do that, we become a bit imbalanced. And you can get extremely stressed and irritable, and it can get the better of you. And I don't want to be like that on Saturday, so today I'm just going to sort of talk some bullshit for an hour, basically. Well, it's not bullshit, but you can look into this stuff and try and stay, and you can go insane. And at the same time, if you lock yourself in your bedroom for a month and take DMT every day, you're going to lose any sense of the real world. It's a balance. And to steal a term that Cookie uses, maybe I'm using it wrong, I'm not as intelligent as Cookie, I don't have a big enough beard, but we all have that duality within us. And I'm hopefully going to get into some of the more, what would you call it, the woo-woo aspects of my awakening this week. This isn't really a scientific show. I'm not really going to argue any point. I haven't done any extensive research on what I'm about to talk about. You know, I might get certain terms wrong or certain concepts wrong, but I'm just going to bypass the news today and share some of these personal thoughts. And one thing I want to address is this concept of awakening. You know, some of you might laugh at that straight away and think I've gone nuts, but you know, you might think it's New Age baloney. We're fighting the bankers and the New World Order. Well, personally, actually, the spiritual side, on a personal level, is just as important to me than the factual side. And let me try and explain what I mean. On a psychological level, it's just as important to get into to meditate, to think, to evaluate your life, to have those days where you're just sitting back and just trying to make sense of the wider picture. That's just as important to me as, you know, writing down the details of the banking system and getting everything all accurate factually. To me, spirituality is really just the inner processes of the mind, the subconscious, or the unconscious, as Carl Jung says, or said. You know, that right brain side of the mind, the dream side of your mind. We all dream. If we didn't dream, we'd die. There are complex processes and operations that go on every time we go to sleep and every time we enter deep thought. We're not just machines, you know, we have a psyche, we have an ego, we have emotional and psychological baggage that affects how we act in waking conscious life. And as we discover information about the corrupt system, about the New World Order, what's really going on, this spiritual side, this psychological side, this unconscious side that we don't necessarily know about or think about, that has to adapt, and that has to the information that we're discovering. You know, you're all different people than when you first woke up. And your psyche had to adapt to its new perspective of the world. To me, that's basically what I think spiritual awakening is. It's simply the unconscious part of your brain evolving alongside with that left awake side of the brain, along with all the facts and figures that you've begun to discover. It's a balance. I'm just going to check the chat because I'm still getting this strange static coming through. So, red, white and blue doesn't dream. Too much cocaine, mate. It's all those raves you went to. Anyway, we can have a rave at Hyde Park, hopefully. Somebody bring a boombox or something. Me, because I don't get it. Why is there static going on in my ears right now? Seems alright anyway. Yeah, so one thing I wanted to address basically is this concept of spiritual awakening. And one of the more famous spiritual awakenings in the truth movement that a lot of people will know about was David Icke's. And a lot of people find what he said to be completely ridiculous, you know, just on the level of being hilarious. He heard voices in his head, you know, truth vibrations. What the hell is he on about? He's a nut job. Well, drawing from some of my own experiences, I have had some personal things happen to me. Now, I'm not saying this is on the level of David Icke or anything, but from my own experiences, I think I can at least understand where he's coming from. You have to remember that the information that most of us discover when we first wake up is extremely powerful, and it is life-changing. And the unconscious mind has to somehow process it all. There's a lot of quote-unquote programming that we end up changing as we wake up. And this process is going to have some kind of impact on your mental state. Most of us, when we woke up, we had Alex Jones and David Icke and whoever else that helped wake you up. You had these people as sort of guides to educate you. But from what I can gather, Icke almost sort of fell into this overnight. And you can tell that it did have an extremely strong effect on his psychological state. You know, he got the synchronicities, he got audibles, he got vibrations. He then went to Peru and took ayahuasca. You know, he dived headfirst into this stuff. So there's no surprise that his right brain, his unconscious mind, couldn't contain it all properly. And it started to have an effect on, you know, his day-to-day life. And Ike's very poetic. You know, he's great at telling stories. He's great at explaining his experiences. And it can come across as fantastical and quite unbelievable. But don't dismiss what he says out of hand because it sounds so silly to that logical side of the left brain. Because on a very smaller scale, I had similar experiences and a very rapid awakening. You know, I was about 18, 19 when I really woke up and started getting into all this information, watching documentaries, reading books, researching 9/11, posting on forums, watching YouTube. I'm only 20 now, and I'm on resistance, writing articles every day, making films like I'm some kind of authority on the matter. It was an extremely rapid transformation for me. I learnt more in a few months by myself on a computer than I'd ever learned in the education system. I've changed so much now that I've almost, you know, I don't relate to the person that I was a few years ago when I was 17, 18. I was very selfish. I was stuck in the pursuit of money. You know, I couldn't see things from other people's perspectives. I had no time. I was very selfish. I was really into the whole mainstream pop culture. I was a chav, basically. And any news and politics that I did read was The Guardian, and I thought I was all intelligent. And that all changed really within the space of a few months. And whether something extra, the great ether, gave me a helping hand or not, the psychological side also had to transform just as rapidly. If you get all this information all in one go, and you go head first into it, it has an effect on the way your mind operates. And I had some very strange, what some would consider new age spiritual experiences. So I don't discount some of these more fantastical stories about people's awakenings out of hand, because I have had some similar things. You know, I began to have extremely vivid dreams. And if we want to stick on the scientific level of this kind of thing, vivid dreams and having a lot of dream activity and restless nights and whatnot, it's a sign of psychological changes. It's a sign of the mind working overtime. And these dreams, they quickly developed into lucid dreams. And lucid dreams are dreams where you're fully aware of what's happening in the dream. You're fully conscious within the dream as if it's really happening at the time. But you're partially awake at that sense. But when you're fully conscious in a dream and you know it's a dream, you know, then you can sort of interact in the dream like it's waking life, but knowing that it's just a dream. So you can do all sorts of crazy things, you know, jump off your house and go flying around the neighborhood or whatever. So that was one aspect, vivid dreams. I started having lucid dreams. I didn't practice lucid dreaming. I didn't really know what it was until afterwards. This just kind of sprung on me as I was waking up to all of the 5 sense, factual, New World Order kind of stuff. And I would wake up in the night with my eyes watering, really, my head was literally, sounds stupid, but my head was vibrating. and I would sit up and it would feel literally like white noise, like a really loud static was being played around my head. Sometimes I would wake up with a boom of energy just vibrating through my head. I'm not sure if it was literally vibrating, it was more of a sort of inner thing. I could hear static, like a plane flying over my head sometimes. Just the loudest thing would just wake me up. Like in a horror film where it's like, where there's a big sort of sharp sound, but that was happening within my head in the middle of the night. So when things like that have happened to me, I can understand the more poetic and descriptive New Age sort of descriptions people give to it, you know, like truth vibrations, like the third eye opening, like shack kind of thing. Because I think I have experienced some of those things. I don't necessarily put those labels on it, but they're bizarre nonetheless. And again, it doesn't have to be, you know, this doesn't have to sound woo-woo. There's scientific terms out there for these things. Just Google, go Google right now, exploding head syndrome. They even give it a crazy name. But that's exactly what I had. Loud noises, the feeling of something really loud within my head, vibrating, that kind of thing. And this was at the same time as I was getting into all of this stuff. And my interpretation is that because it was so life-changing and changed my whole perspective on what life was and how you're supposed to act as a person, that psychologically my brain had to change to catch up, if that makes sense. That's how I'm kind of looking at this. And yeah, as I said, I had lucid dreams. Really bizarre, vivid dreams. And yeah, in these dreams, I came across reptilians. Ooh, reptilians. So, you know, I can understand that some people who are maybe a little more fantastical in the way that they just are, that they can take dreams about reptilians, vivid dreams about reptilians, and sort of, you know, progress the idea until it becomes something like David Icke's theory on reptilians. I can understand that. Because personally, I had dreams about reptilians. One time, I was laying in my bed, and two reptilian creatures took up the bed sheets and morphed into two smoking hotties. And the rest is history. That was one experience with reptilian creatures during lucid dreaming. So I can understand if you're a little more unhinged, or if you have more vivid dreams, or you wasn't aware that it was a lucid dream, that if you came across some kind of reptilian creature, you might think there's such thing as reptiles and shapeshifters. People talk a lot about astral projection, which is projecting your consciousness. Well, a lucid dream is where you're lucid in a dream and you're aware that you're in a dream, and it can be on planet Zog, it can be on Earth, it can be wherever your crazy dream mind takes you. Astral projection is supposedly within the real world. Now, I don't personally think that you're in the real world. I just think your mind's recreated the real world and you're dreaming about within this construct. But I've experienced astral projection like dreams or experiences. But, you know, the reason why I don't think it's necessarily real life, other than that would take some incredible amount of proof to prove, but when I had these experiences, there were small glitches in the dream matrix. For example, I would get out of my bed and take a look on the table, and normally there'd be a lamp, but this time there would be a kitchen microwave. You know, like my mind hadn't quite processed everything correctly, and there were other things like a light green haze everywhere, like I was looking through some green mist. And when you first start lucid dreaming, walking is virtually impossible, or at least that's what I found. You'll feel like you're drunk, and you'll be trying to walk, but you'll be like a baby, sort of stumbling about. It's as if you're trying to wade through sludge. But when you start getting used to it, things become more accurate. The microwave will actually be your bedside lamp. You can start to walk properly. There's no mist about. It seems more realistic. But yeah, in these strange dream states, you will come across mythical creatures and reptilians. You know, one time I looked up at the top of my wardrobe where there would normally be a box, and it had morphed into a giant cartoon vulture, just sort of swinging its head back and forth, minding its own, a little peek down at me. And yet you see these strange things. The only way I could describe it is, has anyone out there seen the Jungle Book film? And they have those three, are they vultures? They're some kind of bird, and the artist has drawn them to look like the Beatles, and they've got the Liverpudlian accents or whatever. It was basically one of them was in my room. Just just a trip, basically. But yeah, you see all these strange things. I once saw a giant purple seahorse firing light rays, and it's basically just a naturally occurring trip without the drugs, but it feels incredibly real. And as I said, all of these things came about while I was getting into information about the 9/11 and all this kind of thing. I didn't practice any of these things. I didn't read about any of this stuff. It just happened to me. And that's why I think people that have these bizarre experiences aren't necessarily lying or making stuff up. They're just taking the kind of things that I've experienced and running with it. And then they're finding other people that are kind of backing them up and filling them with all this extra information, and they kind of build it up into something that it's probably not. I see it as just psychological activity because your mind's just running overtime. I also experienced something that you might describe as the chakra thing, you know, the supposed energy of the body, where this static vibration sort of thing comes up through your body. You see, I don't even know too much about it, but I think I've had the kind of things that you might describe as that happening. It felt like there was something at the base of the spine and then shooting up to the head. And I had that same static feeling. And, you know, the head buzzing thing, to me, after doing reading about it, maybe that's the pineal gland that people talk about. Maybe that's the third eye thing. And interestingly, if you look at the, like a diagram, type in pineal gland into Google and you'll get the scientific diagrams of it. And it does, it looks like the Eye of Horus and the third eye kind of thing. And as I was waking up and having this strange buzzing in my head, and obviously researching about the all-seeing eye and the Illuminati and all that kind of thing, then I had quite a few amazing dreams that involved eye symbolism. There was one funny dream where I'd flown to New York. Alex Jones was actually in this dream, but I'm not going to get to the Alex Jones bit. It was kind of irrelevant. He was just sitting in a plane seat nearby, because obviously I was watching a lot of Alex Jones at the time. But just all sorts of eye symbolism in this dream. We flew past this giant stadium made of like a polished black marble, and the stadium was shaped like an eye. And then we touched down in New York, and I was walking along the New York streets, and I came across this sort of hair salon, it was a hip hop style barbershop or whatever. And I went in there and asked the lady, could I use this shaver to do somebody's hair? I don't think I said that, but you know, dreams are weird. Things just happen. And she said yeah, and I got this shaver and I shaved into this guy's head an all-seeing eye. And then the dream took a third-person perspective, and I was looking from afar, and the whole downtown area of New York was just full of people that had all-seeing eyes shaved into the back of their heads. A really bizarre, but, you know, at the time, quite amazing dream. And, you know, I take that as meaning, symbolically, at that time, I wanted to wake lots of people up to the New World Order. So in my dream, I was shaving all-seeing eyes into people's heads. You know, that's a bizarre way your subconscious mind works. And a good book to read on the pineal gland is DMT, the Spirit Molecule, by Rick Strassman. DMT, dimethyltryptamine, is a naturally occurring substance within the brain. Some believe, and Rick Strassman suggested, that it comes from the pineal gland, the third eye, and it's a powerful psychedelic compound. And it's likely that DMT is responsible for dreaming and out-of-body experiences, and even alien abductions and near-death experiences, all these kind of things. And it's basically a naturally produced psychedelic drug. And I think that's probably what, you know, I'm experiencing. Maybe I had an overactive pineal gland or something, because I was definitely having some psychedelic dreams and states of mind and really bizarre things. And one thing in this book by Rick Strassman that really kind of, you know, it's just one of those things that people run with, but the Scottish Rite Freemasons actually funded his studies into DMT and the pineal gland. The very people with all-seeing eyes on their lodges. It's kind of a funny thing to think about, because all these people were turning down Rick Strassman. They didn't want to help him. You know, it would be too much red tape to try and get, you know, DMT for research and all that kind of thing. But the Freemasons were right there to help him along. Just really bizarre stuff. I'm just going to check the chat because I'm still getting this fucking static thing. Keelan fondles the pineal gland. Yes, this is a batshit crazy episode, folks. Yeah, anyway, you know, I also experienced something called sleep paralysis. I've had the full works, folks. And that's the sensation where the mind wakes up from a dream before the body does. So you're ready to wake up and move around, but your body is stuck, and it can be extremely scary if you don't understand what it is, because it literally feels like you're paralyzed. You know, sometimes you get sensations where you can't breathe. Sometimes your eyes might even open, or you think your eyes have opened. It's not as clear. And then you might experience hallucinations while being stuck in this paralyzed state, where your mind is ready to, like, get out of bed, but it can't. And the most common experience during lucid dreaming, which I've had a couple of times, is called the night hag. And this is where get this sensation, or you actually see kind of a witch, or a goblin, or a reptilian, or, you know, just sometimes it's just a dark, shadowy sort of presence, and it's literally sitting on your chest, and you can't breathe because of this thing sitting on you. And sometimes it just stares at you, you know, blinks every so often, and you're like, what the bloody hell is this? And if you don't understand like what's happening, you obviously are going to be completely petrified, and people go see doctors about sleep paralysis and stuff. But once you kind of just read about it, you can embrace it, and sometimes it's quite funny. You know, I've had a cat walking over me, and its tail's tickling my armpits, and I can't move. That's kind of like, that's the funny side of it. Sometimes you have a goblin trying to kill you. But that's just another thing that I experienced during the time that I was waking up. I don't have it very often anymore. What was I going to say? Yeah, and other people have reported, you know, all sorts of bizarre experiences during sleep paralysis. You can feel like you're being raped, that you're being sodomized, just awful things. And one thing that I think might be explained by lucid dreaming, by sleep paralysis, by these sort of different altered states that you can get yourself into by accident or by deliberately meditating and and doing various techniques. One thing I think it might explain is alien abductions. And, well, I'll go on to talk about something else, and I'll come back to this because it all kind of links together. Because I also experienced something called the hypnagogic state. And that's the point just before you go to sleep. And whereas sleep paralysis is waking up and your body's still being asleep, the hypnagogic state is keeping your mind awake as you go to sleep. And anyone can do this. I mean, this is actually quite easy if you just spend the time trying to do it. I mean, all you got to do is relax, close your eyes, lay down or sit in a chair or whatever, and look at your eyelids. Don't try not to think about things necessarily. I'm sure you know what I mean. Like when you look up at the sun in the summer and you close your eyes, you can see like an orange ball. Do that. Just look at the back of your eyelids. And as different colours and things start sort of flying about, just sort of keep your eye on them. They'll get brighter. Sometimes you'll start to see shapes and patterns and all sorts of weird shit. And basically, I guess what you're doing is hypnotizing yourself. And, you know, it will start to get more vivid, more elaborate. You can start to visualize things. For me, what happens when you get to a certain point is you'll hear a pop. You will actually hear it. You'll get a bit of static. And a really bright green colour will just overtake your vision behind your eyelids. Start twitching. Try not to open them, because if they twitch too much, you'll open and you'll be awake and you'll forget what you're doing. But at that point, it's called REM sleep. See, it is all scientific. People just run with it and kind of make elaborate stories about it, when really there is some scientific basis to it. You know, this is rapid eye movement sleep. It's just you've kept yourself awake while you're going into that state. And at this point, you'll begin to see full-blown images. It's almost like watching the cinema screen, but, you know, through your own eyes. I guess some people might call that your third eye or something. But, you know, try not to drift off to sleep. If you can hold it, you can visualize and you can, you know, conjure up anything you want. Or sometimes if you just let it go, you know, all sorts of crazy things. You know, it's a trip. It's another psychedelic experience, but it's... And I've seen what people could interpret as alien creatures. When you're laying back and you see the green haze take over and your eyes start twitching and you start to see different shapes and figures, sometimes these will morph into what appear to be, because you might be part dreaming at this point, what appear to be alien-like figures. And I had an experience where I was laying down, the green pop came after sort of meditating on the hypnagogic state for a while, and these things, just outlines, just grey outlines, I guess people would call them grey aliens or whatever, would look down, have a peek. It was as if the green bit was a portal or something that they were looking down into, and I was below it, and they were just trying to check out what the hell's going on. So they'd walk past, take a little peek, like move along or whatever, just being a bit nosy. And that is some dodgy, trippy thing that happened when I was dreaming, but I can absolutely understand why people might think that they were abducted by aliens, because think about it, the average alien abduction experience is an alien figure looking down at you while you're laying on the table. Well, to me, I was laying in my bed and I was in the hypnagogic state, and it looked like an alien was peering down at me. But it was more of a dream than anything realistic. And I can understand if you're a bit more lucid, or if you've got the sleep paralysis, or if you feel like you're being sodomized during sleep paralysis or having green things staring down at you. I can understand how people can morph that into an alien abduction. And maybe, I would have had the same experience if I wasn't more aware, or if I was, I guess, how do you say it, more aware in the dream sort of sense of it. But yeah, I've had all these bizarre things, and to me they're not necessarily linked to anything else. It's just something your mind does. But while I was having these things, it was while I was waking up. So I can understand people's, I can understand when people say that they're undergoing a spiritual awakening, or that they experience this kind of thing and it's truth vibrations and there's a shift in consciousness. And maybe there is. Maybe I'm just trying to play it down. I don't know, but and you do come to that big question: what is reality anyway? Right? I mean, so I saw these things peering down at me, or people have had vivid alien abduction things. Who's to say that if that was in their mind, if it was their mind doing it, who's to say that's still not real? DMT is found in plants, in all sorts of different wildlife. And when people have taken DMT, they've experienced different senses and ways of interacting with that wildlife. People on salvia have become, a park bench, and it felt like they were a park bench for 200 years before they came back around, and it was really 30 seconds of a salvia hit. So if you're one of those people that believe we're just consciousness manifesting through human bodies and we're experiencing this, maybe if DMT is found in all these different things and people take DMT, maybe it just reprograms the way they experience things, because people start experiencing plant life as if plants have emotions. And you get the psychic people that see auras and all that kind of thing. I don't really know where I'm going with this. I didn't think I'd be this sort of rambly, but yeah, I mean, just don't dismiss these things out of hand. I don't think people are completely crazy. I just think they've maybe experienced things like I've experienced, but a bit more powerful, or they've ran with it and sort of made it something that it's not. I don't really know. But I'm going to take a sip of water right now. But yeah, as I said, it's my belief that a lot of these strange psychological states and experiences that I did have in the few months of when I was waking up, and I do have from time to time still, and sometimes I just do it because I want to have a trip, so I go and meditate and see what happens. But yeah, I do think at the time it was the unconscious side of my mind also trying to catch up with what was happening in my reality. And something I think that relates a bit more to what I'm saying, because I know this is completely confusing because I'm not really using the terms correctly, but something else I experienced during this phase was dreams of being murdered or dying. I'd be on a battlefield and I was hit by like some kind of bomb or whatever, and I was being dragged off on a stretcher. Then there would be a loud gunfire, and my consciousness would melt away, and I'd wake up with, I would wake up thinking I'd just died, so I was very sort of upset. And there was a time where I was dragged out of force onto my knees and shot in the head, and the same feeling that I was dying, literally just sort of melting and fizzling out. One time I jumped off a building, the same thing. One time meteors hit my house, the same thing. And my view on those dreams now is that I was changing as a person when I was learning about the New World Order, learning about how we're being controlled, and how all this materialistic, selfish bullshit that most people go into is not the way to live your life. And it was a big change psychologically and physically. And to me, those dreams were some symbolic death of the person that I was, used to be, and as I was transitioning into, I hate the term, but the more awake, enlightened person that I supposedly am now. Because the unconscious and the subconscious, I don't really know which term to use there. Jung says the unconscious, subconscious is, I guess it's the same thing, whatever. But the deeper parts of your mind are always adapting as we change as people. And I think if you can tune into that, you can get a deeper understanding of your mental state and what you need to do to sort of progress in life. I mean, I was reading Man and His Symbols by Carl Jung, and there's a great example of how the unconscious mind relates to the conscious mind. There was this man who was struggling to adapt to adult life. He didn't feel like he fitted into adult society. He couldn't converse well with his peers. He felt like he was still a younger man, and having these vivid dreams of a ritual in the jungle. And when Jung analysed this dream, the details of this ritual that he was dreaming about, when they looked it up, was an actual real ancient ritual that used to be performed when this ancient tribe, when young men in this ancient tribe became men. It was a coming of age ceremony. So the man's unconscious mind was trying to accommodate for the social problems he was having in modern life by doing this coming of age ceremony while he was dreaming. His unconscious mind was trying to adapt and help him along, because in his modern life he just wasn't getting to that point. And the recurring dream that I keep having is that I'm back in college, and I somehow know that I shouldn't be there because I've left. I'm supposed to stay until I get my A-level results, right? And they never come. And it's so frustrating. I'm just waiting. Oh, when will this end? Just let me leave college. Now, in real life, I did get my results. I got good results. And, I could have gone on and done lots of very evil things in the world. But at the time, I didn't make a big deal of it. I chose not to go to university. I have a website that makes a fair income, it gets me by, because I wanted to focus on the truth movement. Now, I interpret that dream as my unconscious mind perhaps not quite understanding where I'm at now. You're supposed to get those results, feel all happy about it, go on to uni, be successful, be a businessman, or whatever. And I do think there's a bit of emotional, psychological baggage there that I haven't addressed in my waking life. So my mind keeps going back to that point before I got my results, that sort of crossroads where I decided to do this instead of being an evil corporate stooge or propagandist journalist, because that's what I wanted to be. And my subconscious is somehow looping that part, because there maybe are some regrets that I didn't do that, and there's maybe some unfilled potential there. Because I do see my friends now at uni, or making money and all that kind of thing. And perhaps part of me does want to go back to sleep and do what I'm supposed to do, what life expects me to do. And psychologically, my mind's trying to work out what's going on here. Why is he not doing that? And it goes back to that point. The unconscious mind is very powerful. And I think you can learn a lot about yourself if you study dreams, if you embrace these bizarre, lucid dreams and all that kind of thing. And one thing you can do is keep a dream journal. Basically, just keep a note and pad beside your bed when you wake up. If you can remember what you were dreaming about, quickly scribble it down, and gradually you can build up a book of what your dreams are about. And if you start studying them and becoming more acquainted with how your mind works, then you'll start to experience something called dream deja vu, or precognitive dreams. And this is where it gets a little bit woo-woo again, a little bit crazy, but bear with me. And that's basically experience where something you dreamt about happens in real life. Now, I don't necessarily think that's a psychic ability, not literally predicting the future, but what you're doing, you're tapping into the inner workings of your mind in your dream state, the unconscious side of your mind that you don't usually get to think about consciously, and you're literally looking at some of your psychological programming, working away, and you pick up on some things that then actually happen because your programming and your subconscious. It's hard to explain. I hope you understand what I'm saying, but you're sort of tapping into what you would kind of do anyway, but it's just your subconscious mind sort of programming that in, if you will. Think of a cat. Okay, think of a cat. Anyone that's owned cats will notice that they're sort of very robotic. They'll be doing one thing and then they'll just walk off as if some cue from somewhere else made them do it, but you don't know why they're doing it. Or every day they'll walk along the same fence, and at around 3 p.m. they'll go eat their cat food. That's sort of based on their limited instincts, their limited cognitive function, and they live in a smaller scale world than we do. The cat's brain knows that it's going to walk on the fence and eat food at 3 p.m. They're not really consciously aware of these things, but that's just what they do because their mind got into a way where it's programmed to do that. Now, when you go to sleep, the mind processes incredible amounts of data based on what you're doing right now, what you want to do in the future, what happened yesterday, all these things, all this data that goes into your mind, and that creates, your psyche or whatever. You know, whereas the cat is probably going to walk on the fence tomorrow and eat its food, humans have a much more varied potential, okay? Now, it's a pretty rubbish analogy, really. I shouldn't have said it, but for a cat, right, it might have a precognitive dream where it's walking along the fence, right? Because that's what the cat does, and that's the information that the cat's been given, and that's how it's processed, and in its limited mind frame, that's what the cat does. For a human, the same process is so incredibly complex, with so many different factors in your subconscious mind, whether what you've watched on TV, blah, 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 just so many things, that when you get an unexpected parcel at the door, and then you go, oh crap, I dreamt I was going to get a parcel, that's a precognitive dream. But I don't think it's necessarily that you predicted the future. It's more likely that you tapped in to your subconscious mind as it's churning over all of this information that you're not even consciously aware of. And you've kind of picked up on something that had the potential to happen, and then it happened. You know, one of my precognitive dreams was that I was at a music festival and I was incredibly drunk, and there was a big sense of danger. And then a few months later, I did go to a music festival, global gathering, and I got completely tanked on vodka, a medical tent. Now, it was vivid enough for me to go, hang the fuck on, I've dreamt about this, it's already happened. But it's not necessarily that I predicted it. It was more like my subconscious mind was perhaps going through all these different combinations and outcomes and different scenarios based on things my friends had said that I'd forgotten about, based on the fact that it's probably likely in the future that I'm going to go to a music festival, maybe different social, I don't know what I'm saying, social interactions would cause me to drink more than I normally would. Maybe I didn't know the people there, things like that, and that led me to get tanked up on vodka. And the subconscious mind has all this information swirling around in there, different things that might happen. And I think because certain people, if used to recording their dreams, they can start tapping into that. And that kind of leads on to things like subconscious cues and subliminal advertising and all that kind of thing, where they try and implant an image in your subconscious that you're not consciously aware of, and then your mind programs that into, hey, I want a glass of Coke, and then you go buy a Coke. But that, that's a show for a different day. Anyway, time flies when you're batshit crazy. That was my bizarre one-off adventure down the right brain rabbit hole, I guess. Please don't use it against me. I wasn't necessarily here to argue any particular point. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. I'm just saying some shit that happened to me. And, this isn't my other research. I'm not going to, when I'm arguing about the banks, I'm certainly not going to start talking about exploding head syndrome or lucid dreams with reptilians. But these are some of the experiences I've encountered, and I couldn't be bothered to do a new show today. So I thought it would be a bit interesting for me to lay all this out there for you to have a giggle at. But there you go, that was the batshit crazy episode of the WideShut Webcast. See you all at the protest for those that are going. I've got all my gear ready. I've got my train tickets today. A little confusing, but I'll get there in the end. I'll actually be there quite early, about 9 instead of 10, so I'll just have to doss about a bit, because it was cheaper train tickets at certain times and whatever, so whatever. There, I am bringing my census, and I do plan on burning it. Now, I'm not going to do this right in front of a policeman. I'll try and do it out of the way of people. I'm not there to burn people or get arrested for arson, but I do want to, you know, burn my census, have a little rant on the megaphone. But that wraps things up for today, folks. Cookie, I believe, will be with us in half an hour with his rabbit hole. I hope I haven't stolen his thunder. But yeah, cheers, guys. See you next week.